Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. Speaker view, like this. Oh, look at Adrian.
Mm-hmm.
How did she do that?
I know.
That's impressive.
She's got that thriller movie. She's like the killer in the background.
Like one eye goes over here. The other
Oh, look, she smiled. I almost saw you later. For kind of like me, just smiling. I could see you for a second. Oh, it's like Blair Witch right there. All right.
Let me see. Turn that off. It's probably just this. Cool. Well, welcome, guys. Let's just start. We ran into each other in a coffee shop, so we figured we'd do a little session. And we meet each other at the weirdest places, just randomly around the world.
You're an easy time and you too. I like, whoa!
And yeah, we don't really have a plan or intention other than show up and see what is what flows, and see if you guys want anything specific or need anything at this point. Or we can talk about being politically incorrect, or
we could just be politically incorrect.
We could start talking about it, and as we amp up,
and start to embody it as a matter of our own integrity, to not just talk about it, but to actually live it. Yes. What? You have to have goals and things. Yeah.
So, is there any theme you've noticed recently in like working with your teams or working with your clients and stuff?
I mean, the thing that I'm at work on across the board, and it's also in also studying the postings in Tier 1 for me. There's two things. One of them is a significant upgrade in who we're being aligned with what we teach and say. And the second thing is, and this is one of the ways I challenge people, is say, what if you couldn't share anything about your own insight about yourself? And what if you weren't just saying, hey, good one on your postings, but you had to actually post how you applied something, the difference it made, especially how you impacted others with it, or produce something in the world? What if that's your only thing you were allowed to share? Not like it has to be that way, but inside of what am I dealing with is really reducing how much we tolerate. We started this in Italy, and now really progressing with when we're talking with somebody like, no, you don't get to just say, I understand. So my experience is how much the moment we understand a particular concept or principle or distinction, then we go on to the next one. We do nothing about applying it, we just understand it. And I'm working on introducing way fewer of them, even just introducing one and have people be it, embody it to the bone, rather than introduce 50 that nobody's living.
Nice.
So that's probably one of my biggest themes right now. And it's producing order of magnitude more impact than teaching people lots of stuff.
Cool. Yeah.
And just an observation. It's not like the it's not a well, it's predominant. It's not like with everybody.
It's law.
Is that to avoid the discomfort of what there is to deal with in embodying what you just learned, because it'll deal with some things, that then people will just like understand it, shelve it, be able to discourse about it with great detail and stuff like that, but then wait for the next one and dive into this and talk about it again, so they don't have to deal with the work of it.
Cool.
That's the most common theme right now, I would say.
Nice. Let's see. So to give you guys a little bit of an update on what I'm feeling for the remainder of this program is mainly two phases that I want to lead you guys through still. One is I want to discuss or deliver some topics and meditations that further help the emptying out process of the illusion of self, the assumption of self. So I'm feeling, not for this talk, but I'm just sort of updating you guys on going forward. I feel like there's two more phases to this program, and there could be more, but one is actually going within and through certain contemplations and meditations and insights and seeing and pointings to really get to that place where you're like, oh my fucking God, there's actually nobody here. It's a complete myth. At the absolute level, it's a complete myth that there's somebody here, someone with their own needs and their own preferences and all that stuff. Now, of course, these things are included. They're be embraced. They're allowed to be there. It's not a suppression, but it's a form of seeing that every appearance in your life, every thought in your life, every preference in your life, every bias, every conditioning, to truly see that it lacks any kind of core center. So it becomes like this centerless awareness. So I want to move you guys more through that phase. And then coming out of that, reapplying some of the things we've already worked on, I want to begin to move into actually actualizing each of you guys as individuals. And also the one-on-one kind of sessions are also going to still be a portion of this. But then that final phase I envision is getting you guys on track, like getting it specific, getting it precise, getting it actualized, helping each other do group exercises. As part of the homework, having you guys form groups for whoever hasn't yet, but I think pretty much everyone is in some kind of a group. But we'll make that more specific too, maybe smaller groups, and really get something crystallized and get something formed, put something in form, and then ideally see how this fits into a bigger vision. So how do we blend, which is kind of a new conversation, at least it's a new conversation for me to an extent, is so how do we take this power that is you guys, that have awakened to a certain extent, that have empowered themselves to a certain extent, that are committed to continue to do that work, and how do we take that and make sure that it's very aligned for you guys as to what you are doing. It's very aligned for your individual calling, and then begin to group that together, but see how that fits into the bigger picture and how some of you guys may be able to express as part of that greater vision or as part of the Trinfinity umbrella, perhaps even. So there's, before we sort of release the program or say like, okay, this is quote unquote officially the end of the official sessions, doesn't mean there would never be a follow-up. And of course the group will continue to be open and active. So, and if something comes up, I'm still going to be sharing it with you guys. So it's not like it will abruptly end, but the official end of it, I want it to end with a high level of clarity so that we all feel that all of you guys have been activated, have been awakened to both the emptiness of self, the deep devotion to be of service to others, and then how to apply that in alignment with your calling. and begin to form, and that'll just be the very beginnings of it, but begin to form this larger network, this larger overview, this larger sort of army of shepherds, this army of devoted beings and service to the planet. So that's kind of the overview as I'm feeling it currently. Just want to update you on that. Another topic that's been up for me is, and this has been on an ongoing basis for the last year or so, I'd say, and it's just the feeling of being more exclusive to be more inclusive. And I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit too. Is like, and I think you used the analogy of like if you want to build an airplane, right?
Yeah.
Like if you want to.
Yeah, you know, one of the things is we've all made the mistake of like, we want to do something that impacts all humanity on the planet. And so the predisposition is to go, oh, let's include everybody in everything we do. And that stops being functional. My observation of patterns in things in humanity is that everything serves a purpose. And often we'll have an insight about one thing, oh, we need to be inclusive, then we make exclusive wrong. And actually there's a right time for everything. If I wanted to build an airplane, best in the world, that everybody could fly on, I would exclusively use the best engineers. I wouldn't get everybody on the planet's input on the building the plane. Can you get that? And we would design it in the best manner possible such that everybody could fly on it. And one of the things, you know, that we're really realizing for us to build models, prototypes, and systems that will impact all of humanity, we need to work with a few people who are willing to do the work at the level that it needs to be done.
Yep. So we're feeling into how to blend that, like how to design that, both for ourselves, like as individuals, as teachers, facilitators, visionaries, however you want to call that, how to create a life that has that balance of exclusivity and call it privacy, or I don't know what the word is, but I guess you could call it like safety in a way, like the safety, not even from physical danger, but the safety or the, I don't know, but like the exclusivity, I suppose, where the environment is of a pure nature, is of an inspiring nature, is of a nourishing nature, to where from that environment as sort of a basis, we can go out into the world and start these projects, or we can release these pockets of like you guys, and release these people that are really inspired to do the work out there and show up for people, so that we have that balance, we have that foundation, we have that, I don't know, it's a different word for safety, but it's like, does anything come to mind?
Well, I mean, I guess it's all about environments. It's an environment that allows you, it's safety. It's in an environment that absolutely nurtures that, and that we have no fears or concerns about what we're going to do, what we're going to try. Like everybody's so on board. I was just thinking about it. You know, I thought about it's actually not even that exceptional. Like you're talking training doctors and then surgeons, and they're like, it's in a very exclusive group, and the demand on them is a demand they don't put on everybody. Doing this, being an intern, being up, like, you know, doing 20-hour shifts. And but it's not a problem. You know, you would start to put that demand on everybody where you go, oh my God, that's abusive. No, inside of that, right? Inside of the context where it's actually safe to make the demands, to do the inquiry, to deepen in, to make the challenges, which are not for everybody.
Right. Nice.
Right. Otherwise, how are you going to get anything done? If we don't do that, then we'll only have more of what we have. Right? If we only operate inside of the current environment and don't allow ourselves to get an environment that goes outside of it, we'll just produce more stuff that produces more of this world. It's not really complicated.
Yep. Cool.
So one of the things that we discovered is like, oh, if we're actually following the principles, in order for us to design what's next, we need to design an architecture and an environment that will allow us to design what's next. We're just going to come up with it with what we have. So it's actually taking the time to think it through, to think through all the designs. Said, oh, okay, what do we need? We need space, we need time, we need people who are willing to operate at a much higher level. We need time away from the matrix to design stuff outside of it, you know, all of those different things. So we want to create an environment that allows us to do so. It's a laboratory that's for something. You wouldn't have a surgery without making it sterile. It's an environment that allows for that to happen. It's not the regular day-to-day environment, but it's an environment that's more particular for that to be accomplished. creating a laboratory or a clean room in which to produce, you know, really high quality electronics, whatever it is, it won't happen in just a regular environment.
Cool. Is anyone here, before we just continue to ramble, is there anything you guys want to share or interact with us about? Any questions, any themes that are up for you? Any curiosities going forward, perhaps? And also, again, this is the calling man. So if you have any calling related questions, and we may still do a follow-up call on the calling work specifically. This is just more of a casual, like we got together last night and we figured we would connect with you guys. So use this for whatever you want tonight. And if so, just raise your hand. And it's small enough where you can just do this on the screen if you want. Container, yep. That's a good word. No? Cool. Or did someone raise their hand?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Cool.
Well, I had a couple of things. So also, I think one of probably one of the most significant elements, which is counterintuitive and contrary to how people are operating, is, and listen, I'm dealing with, in the last couple of years, throwing out a significant portion of my old work because it was where it was limiting. Mm-hmm. So guys, I was very, very good and made my reputation on being able to take any result that either a company or person wanted to produce, put it in front, blueprint it, deliver on it. And that's considered very desirable, right, in the world. And but the whole thing is where you're navigating from is here's where I'm getting to, right? Here's what I'm getting to. Whether I'm getting to doubling my business or whether I'm getting to a state of enlightenment, it doesn't matter. You have a goal and a vision or a picture out in front of you, clear? So one of the most important things is the 180-degree turn of this, to no longer navigating at all from where you're getting to navigating only from where you're coming from. So you're navigating from where you're coming from, not from where you're getting to. So right now, your attention is truing up now, truing up now, truing up now. And really, like a motherfucker, like truing up like right now. And so what the cool thing about it is, it suddenly takes no time to live an aligned life because it's only right now choosing how you're going to decide what's next. Choosing right now how you're going to decide. Are you going to decide from avoiding discomfort or are you going to decide from being aligned? Like right now, you can start making every choice that way right now. Will it take something? Yes. Will it take effort? Yes. It might cost you something. You might walk away from money. You might all sorts of things. So I can promise you two things if you live from here. One, without fail, I can promise you, you have no idea where you're going to end up. Those addicted to certainty, it's not going to go well for you. So what for sure, you won't know where you're going to end up. And for sure, wherever you end up, you'll be at home, aligned with yourself. The cool thing is, it's 100% reliable methodology for living an unimaginable life. Because as you start to choose not from your picture, but from alignment, it starts having to take steps you wouldn't take, and you keep ending up in places you could not have imagined. I started this in the summer at one of the events when I said, holy shit, I realized my imagination limits what's possible. No matter, and I made a good business from imagining crazy results that other people couldn't, and then delivering on those, but actually, how can I have even a clue what's possible? Like my imagination is such a fraction. And so now in the last couple of years, as I've moved to navigating from, I'm having up in things I could not have imagined. And the Sierra and things like that, like literally, like we're not even, I couldn't have set those as goals because I didn't even know they existed. Yeah. And then the thing is, and chasing the thing about this, or even about your own personal enlightenment and all of that, out the window, all of it, you have to let all of that go. Probably the most important thing to practice is giving up all the pictures that you have. You got to give up all that entire world of what is a picture? What is a picture? Oh, here's my picture. All your attachment to your picture of things is probably, I would say now, at least from my current level of awareness, I would call it one of the most destructive forces in your life. Now I have to co-bite this in my own dismantling. So the different errors I made along the way. The first one was I wanted people to be happy. So they would say, I said, what do you want? They would say, I want this. And I would like, I'd help the guy triple his business. And now it's this huge failure because, 6 months later, he tripled business. Anybody was like 3 times as stressed. He didn't know how to train people. It was just his life was a mess. Well, that's not what I wanted for this. Jump ahead a few different steps. And it was, wait a minute. Before I help people fulfill their intention, I have to get more sourceful about what their intention is, that it's not coming from a lack belief. That's not an inherited dialogue. So then we do this work with people, not just me, other people also I found who do it really well. Would have people get grounded, get clear where they're coming from, create visions that were inspiring. They would make you cry because they came from a very sourceful place. They came from a place, right? So they create this vision and it's amazing and you go, yes. And then you start to deliver on that vision. And an old format, small version of integrity is, we must produce that by this time, right? But your vision needs to be dynamic. So what happens is they created that vision from a particular place and it was joyful. Then seductively, without noticing it, they start to come from the vision versus from the place that created the vision. And then the attachment to the vision starts to mutate them and bend them away from self. They start to do this or cut corners or have fears in. And that was subtle, but it started, and I couldn't figure out why, even with these beautiful creations, people were still going off of true. And so what really works is allowing to create yourself visions as goals, but allowing them to be completely dynamic. And the more you stay true, you create them as starting points to move towards. But if you stay true to who you are, they keep modifying, they keep changing. But more than anything, take a flamethrower to every picture you have of how you want it to look. It's one of the best things you could do. Write them all down on paper, put them in a bonfire, just literally burn them to the ground. And the fun thing is, in the non-linearity, like non-temporality of things, if you get that and you can start just managing where you're coming from, then you're done, actually. Then you're just here. There's nothing else you need to work on or manage. You can actually start to immediately access that principle that every one of you has read, which you still ignore, which is the whole one aspect of enlightenment is to get that there's nowhere to get. And what you keep trying to do is trying to get to that place where you can get that there's nowhere to get, which is, I'm just saying, so. But I also realized that just reading that and understanding it doesn't give you access. So there is a reliable point of access, which is getting your calling and managing where you're coming from. Live with honor, live with integrity. And at the beginning, it seems like to take more to live with honor because you can't cut corners. You might have to walk away from money that has no honor, whatever it is, just has no honor. And it takes time and effort and it's more hard. And then suddenly, if you do it enough, it pops. And then it's easier. Because when you already know you're going to choose the path of honor, no question. You don't have to think. Suddenly, your mind gets very quiet. So it's where are you coming from now? You just got to deal with how much you're full of shit right now. If I use the calling work as a specific example, we can actually demonstrate how people, if they just do a little bit of work, they can, oh my God, living from my calling is like the most important thing. It impacts my life more than anything, except you don't make it important. You just, you do it, put it aside. You don't even remember it this week, whatever. And, like I said, if you had to take a pill every hour to stay alive, you'd remember. And, if you wanted to learn to play guitar, you take guitar lessons, you put architecture and environment in place. You practice guitar, you take lessons. You want to be an engineer, you move to a different city, you go to college, you take courses all day, you buy textbooks because you want to be an engineer. So you want to be your calling, which would make more difference in all of those things. You would actually make changes like that. And if you made changes like that, you would actually start to be your calling. And then all of this, I would promise you somewhere between 80 to 100% of all the stuff you're dealing with would disappear. So the thing is, if you just take the calling work as a basis, get authentic. If there's anything you are really committed to, and you've all done this, you learn to ride bicycles, you learn to whatever. So you kept doing it until you could do it, right? You kept practicing how to drive until you could. Why? Because it was important. So if being your calling was important, you would literally actively practice it. You would take hours in a day to practice it until you were being it. And if you're not, you should just go, oh, look how profoundly full of shit I am.
So how would you summarize people, or not even summarize, how would you say people practice their calling? Like, what would a couple hours of practicing your calling look like, so to
Well,
speak?
there's a few different things, right? So first of all, I actually tell people before you go to practice, spend time, like actually schedule time. Well, I'm going to actually take time with myself, with the group is even really good, is to brainstorm what are changes in my architecture and environment that would help me, live my calling. One of the things is, well, here's one of the most important things to do. The simplest thing is that IEC chart, right? Mm-hmm. Inconsistent, elevate, and create. Make a list of all the things in my life that are inconsistent with my calling. Oh, look at that. I just remember this guy last year. He goes in my workshop, having this and playing video games all day. So he threw out all his video games except the two that he actually said, it's not, video games aren't evil. I indulge it. So he made changes, he walked around his environment, made changes, the food in my cupboard, his video game, So you look at what is inconsistent, these relationships, these things that I do with my time. See, the IEC is what's inconsistent. E is what can I elevate? I would say this is consistent with my calling, but I could elevate it. And what are new things that I could create in my time, in my physical space, in my relationships? I think I'm going to take this course. I think I'm going to practice. You actually can physically alter your life to be consistent with the calling.
Right.
So one of them is the IEC, and do that every week. The other thing is take practices in a day. I was just coaching somebody, and it's okay. One of the things is look at the areas where you think you are being it. Look at the areas where you're not. Take any one of those areas and go, okay, for the next 3 weeks, every single day, I'm going to elevate. You know what? When I'm hanging out with my friends, like she said, with these people, I'm always worried about how I look, and what they think. So she's taking on responding from her calling versus validation whenever she's in that situation. She's taking that on for the next month.
Nice.
So the whole thing is I'm going to elevate the percentage. I'm going to look at areas where I'm not, and I'm going to, and sometimes you even have to go, what would it look like if I was being my colleague? And she had a place she's taking on at work. And bored at work. I said, it's an opportunity to practice. Okay, great. Now she's excited. She goes, okay, I'm going to practice. I'm going to use work, which is not a place that automatically nurtures my calling. I'm going to make it a place to practice in my calling. So she's now consciously going in there to generate that. And the thing is, if people those are places to start, but if people took this on and say, for instance, took it on the groups, they could do some creative sessions. They could do some work. They could say, here's where I won and where I lost today. Here's where I succeeded. Here's where, I got diverted. Mm-hmm. But if you take it on authentically as a commitment, you'll actually also start to come up with stuff. But those are starting points.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I think that's good homework after this call. And we'll make sure that everyone gets to see this recording, because there's only a third or a quarter of the group here right now. But I think it's good to, let's see, would you say 1 week? Or let's see, I'm thinking your chart, right? So I is inconsistent.
Yeah,
E is elevate, and
C is create.
Things that aren't there yet.
Yeah. So you could go, so well, if you looked at you look at your life, you look at your physical space, you look at you look at your relationships, you look at your health and well-being, right. You look at your state of being, and you go, wow, here's what's inconsistent, and this and this, and well, look at this closet. I had somebody, well, shit, I'm just getting rid of 3/4 of my old clothes and stuff. They're just purging. It's not complex, right? And then you go, well, I can see my relationship with my husband it's not inconsistent, but I could elevate it, and I could expand it, and then you start to do, wow, what are completely new things? And somebody was like, I can't remember, but their calling was something around people being more free to be themselves, and they actually decided, I'm going to create new things. And one of the things is they started taking a couple of leadership programs that taught about how to empower people, because they said, I'm going to develop myself to be better at having people get freed up. And so I'm actually going to develop myself. So they created some new things in their life.
Cool. Sweet.
And it's actually quite simple. If you were going to be a professional musician, you would start to line that up. You would do this. You would buy an instrument. You might get, coaching from a real master. You would have hours to practice. You would do those things, right? You would play with other people, and then if you did that enough, you would be being a musician. And the thing about this is it literally is whatever you practice is you're going to end up embodying and being. And I'll tell you this, we may discover something else in the next few years, but right now I've been doing this for 25 years. I've not found anything that makes more of a difference in your life than practicing being a calling.
Right. Nice.
One of the interesting things, Bentinho, is like after working in many disciplines on removing stuff from your past and trauma, all the way to like little things people deal with, literally 80% of them disappear when you start working in your calling. So I expected small stuff to disappear, like, oh, I'm irritated by this, I'm bothered by this, but when you generate your calling, you're like, oh, I'm joyful and I'm not bothered by it. But something that I didn't expect, which is showing up, is even like deep trauma, which I've done work with Gabor and other people and, healing, and you go back and heal it. I found that just constantly coming from your calling starts to leave you loving and joyful and connected. It starts to heal those traumas and holes in your heart without having to work on them.
Yeah.
And then if you do work on them, there's a fraction of the work required. Right. So right now, where we've done that with some experiments, and even to things like where Richard and I were down in Peru with the Shipibo healers doing one of the best places in the world doing ayahuasca, and people are going down for trauma work. If we had the calling before it, and throughout the week and 2 weeks that they're doing it, we've seen a multiple level of escalation of them moving through.
Nice. Because
they're aligning towards their calling versus only focusing backwards on the trauma. So guys, so much of what you are focusing on and dealing with, you can, if you take this on, they'll just disappear. My question about that, from Amber's question, is what does not already exist in a previous call video, or is it worth doing it?
What about square one with explaining to people how to know their calling? We can briefly go through the 3 questions.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I can do that. And then the other thing is that, and then if we also do have just a calling word call, I can spend the beginning of that reviewing it in more depth with a couple of people, but I will go through that. Yeah, okay, cool. So
find, in the meantime, like tune into something that you feel is perhaps inconsistent in your life or is not aligned to your calling, where you're not clear, but the clarity of your calling doesn't shine forth, so to speak. It's not outshining that area of your life. It's kind of like muddied up. It's kind of like cloudy and dense, and it doesn't have the quality of your calling infused in it. So that after this explanation, we can do some work with one of you guys.
So, what you're looking at, so the quick background is, if you looked at it, what gives your life is your intention. Your real intention. To one of the places we're full of shit. We say, oh, I want to get in shape, but your real intention is to avoid discomfort. So your actions are always consistent with your intention. People say, I want to be in a relationship, but their real intention is make sure I don't get hurt again. So every time the relationship starts to get going well, they sabotage it because they start to become vulnerable and avoid getting hurt. So what's happening is always consistent with your intention. When you become curious, well, what's a powerful intention then from which to live my life? And in our work, we discovered that the one place that's 100% reliable for leaving people fulfilled is when they make a difference with somebody. Like every time somebody experiences making a really positive impact in the quality of life of another human, when they actually make a difference, they always experience like fulfillment and joy. So yeah, isn't that interesting? So every time you make a difference, you experience fulfillment and joy. So if you always want to experience fulfillment and joy, make a difference. Be of service. Then in deepening that came the realization that each person seems to have their own resonant frequency. That they love to see over with another human being. And when you see this with another human being, it completes you, it fulfills you, leaves you lit up, makes your heart sing. So often the 3 questions that I ask is, listen, what is it if you could leave another human being with, if you could impact another person, leave them with any experience, what would make you the most joyful and fulfilled? Is you could leave somebody with what experience? Right? Another question, so one way of looking at it is if you have children, if you had children, And if you're going to leave the earth tomorrow and you could just leave them with one thing, just leave them with, I could leave them with the gift of living life or having access to this experience in life. What would you want them to have more than anything? And then you would be complete and you could live. A different way of looking at it is from the experiential aspect, which is look at a time in your life where you were really moved. Like you were just really moved. Like you can't be inauthentically moved. You're only moved by what authentically moves you. What was going on in that moment? What was happening? And what was the experience that you were really moved by? What touched you the most? What just like, it so stands out. And so it's a simple thing. And sometimes you write it out. You come up with words and phrases. You come up with different things. Very rarely do people get it always like right away, but they start to get in front of them the sense of it. Usually what people first start with is what's in their head. And you have to burn that off so you can get what's really in your heart. When you really get it, you just really feel it in your whole body. So don't sell out on that. Do the work. Keep it in front of you for a while. Be willing to distill it. You may come up with a bunch of words and phrases, and you could ask yourself, okay, well, if all of that got delivered to a person, what would that do? If I got all of that, how would I feel? And be willing to get in touch with a feeling even you can't name, but you know what it is, and just keep that in front of you, and maybe words will arise. The point is you connect with something. It literally, you can feel it. The idea of landing that with people, the idea of seeing it just makes you grin. You can't stop. So that's where to start.
Cool. Another question I like, which you could both apply to getting clear on what your calling is, but also once you already have a sense of clarity on that and you're connected to it, to help you make that real and sort of like do the homework that we just said, like what's inconsistent, what can be elevated, to sort of accelerate that process and make it more like almost remove 80% of the process of needing to even change things, is so to help you get into an altered state change again, in addition, kind of like doubling up on the effect of your calling. So let's say you have an understanding what your calling is, you're moved by it, you can feel it. And then it's about like, okay, how to bring them to the world. And when the rubber meets the road being the circumstances of your life that you've created up to that point that are now crystallized as your environment. So then the question basically being, what if I have nothing left to lose? Because so many of the structures that we've created that hold us back. Some of it's just conditioning, not knowing why we're here, not feeling what we're here for. But then once you are connected to what you're here for, to ask yourself the question, what if I had nothing left to lose? And then suddenly a lot of the structures that are around you that are either inconsistent or need elevation, a lot of them will either just fall away or seem redundant or seem silly or seem like completely non-consonant with that new state change, that new anchoring in. So actually consider this also in like then going into your homework over the next week or two. I'm assuming you guys already have some understanding of your calling. You're already able to connect to it, but if not, please do let us know here. We can work on it now too. But continue to work on that with the questions that Anurag asked and meditating on that. But assuming that you have that, then ask yourself the question, what if I had nothing left to lose? And just kind of drop into the silence for a few minutes and ask yourself that question. Don't react to anything that comes up. Just let this purge happen, if you will. Let the shift happen. Let the state change happen through that imagination of what if I actually had nothing left to lose? Like everything I thought I had, everything I thought that was important, everything I thought I had built up to this point, everything I thought I could fail if I were to take these risks. Like, let's say all that already happened, for example. Or none of that could ever happen. Either way, either scenario could work. Either none of your fears could ever come true, or they've all come true already. Kind of like you want to go to an extreme state of imagining that it's no longer an issue. Because the fears or the things that can happen are not the issue, right? It's not what holds us back. It's the fear that they happen. It's that projection of the future of what may happen. So if they already happened, or if they can't ever happen, and you have nothing left to lose, so to speak, or you couldn't ever lose anything to begin with, because this is an abundant universe where the self The greater self is just experiencing itself, and there's no separation. So the only thing you can bump into is more of yourself, whatever it is. So you want to get yourself in that state. And then when you feel that state change, when you feel that sort of amplification of your connection to your calling and to source, then from that elevated state, now you want to take that perspective, then look at the elements of your life. And from that elevated perspective, you will see very effortlessly what doesn't belong, what needs work. But a lot of the things that you think that need work, because you've made the state change, and if you commit to that, if you continue to create that state change and implement new changes, new inspirations from that state change and make them crystallize, make them your environment, then you'll see, kind of like Anurag said with the healing is sort of an after effect. Mm-hmm. It happens naturally, but also the healing, you could consider healing also getting rid of things in your life that don't work for you.
Yep.
It's a form of healing. We got some kids joining us. So that's a form of healing. A form of healing is removing the inconsistencies in the design of your life. It's very simple, because you've placed them there out of pain. You've placed them there out of non-healing. You've placed them there out of non-clarity, out of lack beliefs. And a lack belief is all that can be healed, so to speak. It doesn't really heal. You just make a state change and it's no longer relevant. And then you look back on it, you learn from it, and whatever attachment was left releases itself. But yeah, to get into the nitty-gritty details, like too much, and focus on that without the state change, you're just going to create a whole lot of work for yourself. Whether it's in the department of healing in the typical sense, or whether it's even in the department of this homework that we're suggesting, like making lists and stuff, you have to approach that from being really connected to your calling to begin with. Otherwise, it's of no use, because you're approaching it from the same state that created it, right? So you're not even going to notice what's inconsistent. You're not even going to be able to admit it to yourself, what's inconsistent, or what needs elevating, or what isn't there yet that you should create, but you fear what would happen if you did. So very important that when you do any kind of work on the not self, as I usually call it, we're working on our not self to make it a better vehicle for service to others. So any type of work that we do on the not self, meaning, the mind, the body, the emotional body, etc., you want to really, really approach that from the most elevated state that you can. So it's not about bypassing, but it is about elevating your state to be connected to who you really are. Because again, without that vantage point, you will not have the resonance, you will not have the vibration needed to bump into what doesn't work, because you're of the vibration of what doesn't work. So you're going to just like mesh with it. It's not going to stand out to you. But when you radiate so brightly, then all the objects in the room will start to cast shadows, and you will see them. You will be able to tell that something is not consistent with who you really are. So you want to elevate yourself first, whether it's through a simple imagination exercise. One of the questions, if you deeply contemplate one of these questions, like what was some of the happiest moments in your life where you were truly moved? What would you tell your 5-year-old child if this is all you could tell them and you're about to leave on a mission to Mars and never come back? What's the other one?
Just if you could give a human being a gift of any experience, what would you give them?
Nice. What would you want them to experience most, if it could only be sort of one thing for that moment? And or, what if you had nothing left to lose? Then who would you be? Like if there's no obstacles, no fears, then suddenly how would you act if you had no fears? So you elevate yourself, and then, only then, will you go and look at the components of your life. So first you want to anchor yourself a little bit in that space. You want to feel that movement of energy, because that's what builds the faith in the new vision of, oh, wait a second, this is actually what I can live up to. This is actually what I am. And therefore it's what I can align myself to, so that what I in truth am, I can become. My not self can become more like my true self, if you will. But first you got to make contact. You got to make contact vibrationally, so to speak. Make contact to that state. And like Anurag said, that's when we're moved, we can lie, because it's literally the not self, or the accumulated self, or the asserted self, the believed in self, opening up enough to where the energies connect to the true self that we are. And so every time that happens, we're moved, we usually shed a tear, the chemical constituents of the lack beliefs that have been stored in our bodies are released. And there's this feeling of liberation or release. Something falls off of our shoulders. And we're more of our true selves. We're embodying more of our true selves. And then from that state, you start looking at your life, but not before you generate some of that state to a high enough extent where you can feel it, right? Would you agree?
Yep, 100%.
And then look at the components of your life, and just very simply, you can start with very sort of common things. Like you can make a list about your work or career, make a list about relationships in your life, everything from family, parents, to partners, to friends, to co-workers, whatever it is. And then go on to hobbies, and then go on to physical items in your house, go on to wardrobe. Actually make sort of like classic, typical lists. There's nothing wrong with just doing that conventional approach, because those do encapsulate the components of our lives and how we create our environment. So from that elevated state, you look at it. And if you notice that your state starts dropping as you look at the specific task at hand, reconnect to your calling. Like, remember that feeling more deeply again. Because again, if you don't feel it, you don't have faith in it. It's impossible for the mind, almost impossible for the mind, to have faith in a version of itself, to perceive, to have a different self-image, if you will, to have a different understanding of self, projected going forward into the future of where you can come from consistently. It's very difficult generally to imagine that if we don't have any resonance with it, if we don't feel it. If not, everyone would be living their calling just from an intellectual standpoint, but they're not. So it's got to move you. You've got to be elevated. You've got to be in the vibration of it. You've got to be in the resonance of it. And again, usually when we look at the details, when we're not keeping things general, when we start looking at the details, a lot of us will go sort of like lower their vibration. It starts to take on the shape and size of the logistics at hand, and the linearity of it, and the limitations around it, and what to do, when to do, how to do it, who we need for that. So, which is all fine. There's a valuable component to that, and definitely you're going to deal with some of those elements. And it's not about not including those in your implementations, but it is about checking in with yourself that when you have your focus on that and you start to minimize yourself again, you got to step back. You got to remember where you come from, literally where you come from, why you're even here, right? What gave birth to this body? And it's an intention, because nothing happens without intention. That goes from the God state to God, into form, into world, into body. There is an intention behind it. There's an intention behind evolution, etc. So what's the intention that brought forth your body? You want to connect to that so that you can download that vision or feel that vision of yourself, your self-image, your self-esteem, your self-feeling, your understanding starts to change of why you are here. You start to get these images that are inspiring to you usually. And again, like Anurag said, it's not to get attached to these, but you let these flow. They just come to you because you're tuned into that frequency, like a radio. And you start getting the songs that have always already belonged to you, but you weren't available to them. Now you're dialed up through those questions or meditations or opening up. And then again, then you can take that energy back into the specifics. But make sure that, vibrational management, so to speak, make sure that you stay in alignment with where you're coming from and you're not being overwhelmed with the details. And with practice, you become more fortified in your vibration, and you become less a slave to the environment. It just builds up over time with practice. But be nice on yourself at first, meaning, really catch yourself in the early phases of minimizing your vibration, because you start bringing in logistics and what can work, what can't work, who you need, and all that stuff. Keep recognizing in the background, always keep recognizing and bring it into the foreground of your life. But from the background, from where you're coming from, keep recognizing that background feeling of why you are here, what created you. And also you'll be so much more energized. You have so much more clarity in your meditations. You'll have so much more clarity going forward, your interactions, everything starts to feel more like a play. Even the challenges, even the intense challenges will start to feel more like this, like you're playing with clay. So yeah, basically keep your vibration high, keep it really connected, and then do this homework. And I'm just feeling into how to make this more crystallized, like to have you guys actually feed us back something on the group that is tangible, that we can see, oh, this is what you did. So maybe either make a video where you sort of talk about the highlights. I'm kind of thinking out loud at this point. So, and also,
well, I mean, just from experience, it makes a huge difference when people in the groups that are working on it share, because it creates momentum.
Yes.
So it'd be awesome. Like if you actually, this is the thing about sharing, not sharing from a creative, productive point of view versus only from a reporting point of view. Right. And you go, oh, and like for instance, you could go every day. These are the 3 inconsistencies I handled today. This is what happened, and this is what I did. This is what opened, or like that. And what happens is that as it moves in the group and as people share it, it picks up momentum in the group, and people get ideas and empowered from what other people are doing. So I can tell you from experience that one really works. When we've done it on in a Facebook group, and people even will put in, here's the thing. It's so cool when it gets active. People would say, oh, I'm dealing with this inconsistency. I need ideas. And they'll and then they put it up here, and then like from the community, they'll get like 17 ideas or brainstorms like that. And so it becomes a very community creative process.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. So I would like to start off I would like to see some videos, and I'll post this more concisely in the group as a post for the homework so you can review it. But basically you get into this vibe, this state, connected to your calling. If you need help with this, reach out. There's a lot of people here that have done the calling work quite a bit, and or talk to us right now if you have the opportunity. But I realize not everyone watching this is here live. So reach out on the group if you're still not clear on your calling. If you have trouble connecting to that, it's no problem. It's no shame. Just make that transparent, make that really available so that we can work with it. There's always an avenue. There's always a way into greater connection to your calling. So then you get into the elevated state, then you look at all the elements of your life, from wardrobe to relationships to career to everyday activities to how much time you spend on your phone,
where you live,
where you live, nice location. And then I would love, as starters, we'll do some kind of a daily follow-up, like a mini thing where they just write down, this is what I did today. Yep. But I would also appreciate a video that sort of, after you've gone through that list, that highlights what were some of the biggest things for you that you wrote down, and why, and how you envision going into that process, changing it, or maybe you already have. So a personal video that really sort of demonstrates the courage that arises from connecting to your calling. And we call it courage, but really courage doesn't exist in a way, because courage is only needed if you're not really connected to what you believe in or what you are. Right? So the more connected you are, the more what we describe as courage is natural, but it's really, anyway, I won't go off on that rant, but you get the principle. The higher your vibration, the more your natural actions are fearless. So there is no courage, there's only degrees of fear. So, because courage implies that you have a fear, but you do it anyway, which means you don't actually fear it. You don't fear it enough to not do it, right? So courage actually, in a sense, doesn't exist, although it's a quality that describes an attitude that's wonderful, especially for shepherds, like service to others oriented entities. It's really important to have that courage, to have that willingness. But technically speaking, mechanically speaking, if you're about to do something and actually do it, you no longer fear it. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. It goes against the mechanism of the human mind. It'll always go in the direction without fail that it believes contains the highest amount of benefit. So there is no fear, really. You might have your hesitations, you may have fear projections, but really your fear has lowered, your vibration has heightened. Now what flows from you effortlessly and naturally, therefore not requiring courage anymore, it comes naturally, is because of the elevated state. So again, the more you are connected to your calling, the more you'll believe in that version of yourself, and the more you'll naturally anchor that. And it'll seem like courage to others, but for you, it'll be more and more natural, basically. You're just changing your vibration. You're just shifting into that true self. So share some of that process, like some of the points on your list that perhaps are seemingly the biggest things to you, or previously would seem like they require the most courage. And therefore it inspires this non-existent quality called courage in the rest of us. And it'll help everyone get courageous enough to then transcend those fears and make those changes.
A couple other things I learned from having people do this work. For some people, it helps. Some people, they get the list to get to work. Some people, they feel jammed. And here's what I discovered. is it can help a lot of people get unjammed if they break the list into 3 categories. Like say you have this list of 50 inconsistencies. This is a recommendation. Take the low-hanging fruit, ones that are like really easy to do, and start doing them, because you start to build a momentum. Then the ones that look more difficult start to look less difficult or less fearful, because you get a momentum from the easy ones.
Nice.
So there's what I found is so far in my prototyping 3 categories. What's really easy to do and you know how to do. What's difficult and complex but you know how to do it, which is going to take some time and effort. And 3, what you don't know how to do. So what I discovered was when people keep it all jumbled up,
I like that,
and they don't know how to do stuff, we use that so much as an excuse for not getting started.
Right.
So if you separate it and you declare, these are inconsistent and I don't currently know what to do, how to handle them, and there's these other 2 categories that I do know what to do, there's actually getting, oh, there's nothing wrong with not knowing how to do it. I'm going to put it here and it doesn't have to stop me. And these things are the things I'm going to bring to my group, to the Facebook, to the calls, and ask for coaching.
Nice.
Because we've all done things we didn't know how to do, and when we really wanted to do them, we just asked for advice or looked them up. So once you start to break it down, you go, oh, then it suddenly becomes more manageable versus this FUD.
Oh, I like that a lot. That's great.
And
hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, it's just about making it more operational. Well, all I did was I just kept finding where people were getting stopped, and I discovered the biggest stop for people was, I don't know how to deal with this. So then let me just stop. Let me walk away from all of this.
Right. Versus,
oh, I'm going to have things that I don't know how to deal with, and I'm going to park them. I'm going to clarify what those are, and then I'm going to, at the appropriate time, get what I need to.
Nice.
There's what's easy, know how to do, I'll do it. And then there's what's difficult. And you could either just start doing it, or you may even say, oh, this is more complex to do. I know how to do it, but maybe I'll get some coaching. Maybe there's an easier way to do it, right? Nice. But just getting it out of your head and getting it there and having no disempowerment in any category begins to unblock the flow.
Sweet. Yep.
So those are just some operational points from some trial and error.
That's good. Kind of reminds me of this quote by the crazy guy at Bentinho. He says like, and he talks about it in terms of like, I'm the best in the planet in doing this, but he says, I'm the best at getting you to do what you don't want to do to get to where you want to get to. Mm-hmm. It's basically like a lot of the calling work involves that too. It's like you elevate your vibration and then you see the things that you've been avoiding, right, that are inconsistent. So right. To do, and some of the things you block out by saying too quickly, I don't know how to do them.
That's right.
And then it becomes an excuse and it becomes a lingering thing. And it's an unhealed point, basically.
That's right.
So then to get to do the thing you don't want to do in a way that's like fun and creative, ideally, that's right. That we can like.
And that's what I find, if people are doing it as a community, it's massively elevated than when people are trying to do it alone.
That's absolutely.
A huge difference.
Yeah, because the whole like aloneness factor makes it so much more challenging to do something that you feel is already overwhelming. Right?
That's right, yeah.
So if you have this whole support group, that's great. Cool, Amy. Feel free to unmute yourself and.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey. I would like to have a little bit more clarity on my calling, because when you talk about, for instance, those 3 questions to get more clear on your calling. For instance, what do you want to give to your kids, or what do you want people to experience? When I answer those, it's a different kind of answer than when I stay really close to what feels good to give or to do, or but I don't know if that's just from a safety factor, because it feels safe because I'm used to do that. And hold on, because I had another thing I wanted to ask. What was it? Yeah. And the question, like, what do I want people to experience, is something maybe I haven't experienced yet. So what I can offer is like some level before that. Do you know what I mean with that?
Yeah.
Or
So what is it you want people to experience?
their true self, the truth.
How do you know you want them to experience that?
But I don't feel that if I say that. Do you know what I mean?
But that's what I'm saying. If you have no idea what that is, how do you know that's what you want people to experience? Where did you get that from?
Because it's something that I want, and I yeah, I don't know. I mean, what every time when there's something occurring that lights me up, that's when something is pure, or something is like, yeah, pure essence or pure light, you know?
So you have experienced it.
I have experienced what feels good.
I mean, you say that you get really lit up when you're in the presence of like purity, pure light, pure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that what you want people to experience?
At this moment, yeah.
Well, what other, as opposed to other moments? I mean, this is, here we are, right? Well, so I'm not sure what your question is. So it seems to really resonate with you that, you seem to get really lit up when that's being experienced, yeah?
Yeah.
And you've experienced that?
Yeah.
So so you're actually, it is something you have experienced.
Yeah.
And you notice when you just talk about like, you're just purity, pure light, pure, like you're just whatever with the words, it's less intellectual than when you say, I want people to be, they're true, this, that, whatever. That's your mind working. You get that?
Yeah.
So we want to get rid of what the mind is. There's no logic to what your calling is. It's just what lights you up.
Yeah.
I give that example sometimes when I was leading a course in Colombia, and it was a young man, and I said he wanted to have people experience like power and this and that, because he's just young, you know, it was just, but he could tell his mind really liked it. And we kept doing this work and digging and let go, let that go, let it go. And it was so funny because then he said, he said, love. And then he goes, no, I meant power. Like, because his mind was like, I got this thing, I want people to be powerful, but really what was in his heart is he wanted people to experience love, right? And there was no reason, there was no rationale, there's no explanation. If you're explaining why, then I know it's not it. It's just what lights you up.
And the tricky thing about doing this kind of work in the whole spiritual scene is that you already have a lot of concepts about it, right? So make sure that the feeling of resonance of being moved is what drives the description of what it is, not the other way around. You don't want your descriptions to try to drive what your calling is, because then you're going to do all that work of like make the inconsistencies consistent and elevate and create, but you're going to do it from a conceptual state, and it's just work, and it's going to fall apart again. You're going to have to redo it, and you're always going to have to redo it, even if it is authentic, but it's not going to be authentic of a change. At least not as authentic as can be. So make sure that you really connect to what moves you and eliminate all the descriptions you've ever learned. And then like a child almost that's just come into this world, just learning the language. It's like, if I had to put this into words, this thing, but stay really, really close to feeling the movement, the resonance, the vibration, the sense of identity beyond this, like what moves you, the intention. If I had to put words to this, and you don't have to, but it helps, right? So we can talk about it. But if I had to describe it to someone else for their sake, I know what it is because I feel it right here. This is what it is. It is what it is. It's not going to change if I call it differently. The actual self, so to speak, coming forth is not going to change based on the words. It's actual. It's before words. It's pre-verbal. It's pre-birth. It's pre-everything. So if I had to conceptualize this, then what words would I give to it? Knowing that the description is never the thing. So it's really important that you stay true to that. So you were already demonstrating that you've had moments where you do feel that movement. But then from a conceptual place, maybe you judge it as it's not the ultimate, or it's not here, it's not that. So again, make sure you connect to the calling first. And then from there, describe if needed.
It's really important to get that, guys. Words are not your calling. Words are your placeholder, the reminder, the thing that helps you keep it in life. It's like the words on the menu are not the food.
Right.
There's a big difference.
I'll have this word.
Yeah. It's be like chewing on the menu. So there you could call it jelly bean. It wouldn't matter as long as it reminded you of that experience, the thing that just lights you up.
Yeah. The word is mostly to help you remember it, to help you like resonate with it, right? Like a mantra, but it's only because we lack practice in it. It's only because we lack the practice to recognize it as it is, like beyond words. But if we practice that enough and we use the mantra, we use the words, we use the calling to remind ourselves, to put ourselves back in that resonant state. And then when you do that more and more, you can just know it. You no longer need words for it. It's just you're being it.
There's a good chance that if we taught kids this from an early age and they were practicing embodying it, they would never have to come up with the verbiage, right. Because the verbiage is only a compensation for being off of true in the first place. It's only a marker for which to true up.
Right.
It's not an end in itself.
Cool. Yeah. We'd just be so telepathic and we'd feel everyone's calling and be like, oh, have you met? Oh, yeah, him. I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he feels like this. Oh yeah, I've met that guy. Great. That's his name. His name is.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a wonderful name.
And so also, Leon, so start with that and allow, if you start to work from there, you may find it distill or clarify even more, but you can down the bar puck because you can see you getting lit up about that. So don't try and overthink it. Guys, if you even just kind of get the sense of it, the clarification will be very rapid in the practicing of it, not in the trying to understand it. As you practice it and bring it forth, you'll find, like going out of the groove, into the groove, you'll start to get more and more in it, and you'll be clearer about it from the practice of it, not from the intellectual chasing of it.
You can do it. You can be it. All you guys can fully be it.
It takes less than you think, and it does take something. It takes something in reality, but what it takes is not as much as you think. I promise you, in this and in many other aspects of what you would call your spiritual growth and enlightenment, a lot of the stuff has become more difficult than you think it is because of what I said at the beginning, which is you keep learning it and not practicing it. And as you keep learning it over and over again and it's not happening, we misconstrue that it's difficult. But actually, it's just you heavy on the understanding and low on the practice.
Does this make sense, Leonie?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Yeah.
Sweet. Does it help you? Can you see in your life the distinction from when you've experienced it versus when you've tried to get there through a description? Try to live up to a description that feels lifeless. That's why you call it unrealized. That's why you call it, I know what my calling is, but I can't teach people that because I'm not there yet. Right? So you're coming at it from what you've learned. Can you also see how, oh, I can drop that, and this is what I remember actually experiencing, and I can deepen that connection. Can you feel confident going forward that you can do that?
Yeah, there's just one thing left, but it's mental, so I'll work it.
Doesn't matter. Let's get rid of it.
Okay. So, yeah, it's okay. Start. It's like I can feel whole, it's like whenever you talk about changing the world, implementing changes, or hold on. There, well, sorry. I'll get there. Hold on.
At least you're entertained by it. That's how it's
My calling is not doing the world. My calling is laughing at people believing there's something in the world.
You know, I don't think that we should take your question and answer it, because clearly keeping it is providing a lot of joy for you. So whatever, don't mess with it, honey. You're having a good time. I'm just saying.
If this is mental, I like it.
Yeah, right. It's pretty good. She can't even breathe. She's having so much fun.
Okay. Okay. There's like this feeling at times like wanting to break through things, or like to shake things up. I don't know what my question is, but when I tap into like this pure essence, this just pure light. Well, I think sometimes it goes haywire, but I'll figure it out. Sorry, I don't have a clear question.
Yeah, just practice. Just do the work.
Yeah, I will.
But you know what, guys? I'm going to tell you, for the answer to a lot of your questions is do the work. You won't say you want answers, so you don't have to do the work, but really, do the work. A lot of your...
We talk more because we charge you for this program, but it's really not necessary.
Do the work. And you will discover so many of your questions and issues that you're dealing with disappear because you did the work. You will arrive at a place from a different perspective where you will see things, and no longer those things will no longer be unclear and no longer be barriers. There will be nothing to break through. There's nothing to break through. That's just consider. There's no things to break through. You know, show me a thing you have to break through. You can't show it to me. You know, you can only talk about it. You can only actively spend energy right now in making up in a dialogue something to break through. And if you didn't make it up, it wouldn't exist.
Plus, you'd have to go somewhere instead of come from somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. To break through your linearity, and I need to be on the other side of something where I am.
There's never an obstacle to where you're coming from.
No, you just have that choice right now. And as you say, there's no courage anymore. I use that example about being so shy you can't ask for directions, but then you have to get to a hospital,
right.
And then you just ask somebody for directions. You don't have a breakthrough. You just ask for directions. Right. You don't go, hey, sir, would you stand right there? I'm going to put my audio tape of Bentinho in and have a breakthrough, and then I'm going to ask you for directions. You know, like, you just don't do that. Why? Because it's not. Because if it was real, like if you really had to like go around, walk around the gate, you would have to do that regardless. But you don't have to. You don't have to have a breakthrough and shy. You just ask for the directions. So it's not real.
Right. Leah's asking, guys. She's on an iPhone.
Okay.
I would love to do calling work with you. Would that be possible?
Sure. Do one more. And then I would say that people get from that and work on the questions, and then we can set up just a call, and people can dive into that and bring that.
Yep. Oh, she's here actually. It just says Leah's iPhone.
Okay.
Well, I suppose she's on an iPhone, but she has video. Cool. So, yep.
Hey, what's up?
Ah.
So, well, pretty much like everything that you said, though, like earlier, kind of makes sense of needing to practice it more, I think, to just ground it more into like
seeing it or realizing more deeper aspect of it. But
Yes.
but I think I'm still not like completely sure of what it is. Like I feel like when people experience freedom, or when people experience like the sense of unity or being held and being seen, and but I don't get like this. I think like this exact point where I'm just like completely lit up. So that's why I kind of asked if you would like to help.
All right. Well, so here you are, people experiencing freedom, and what was the other stuff you said?
Like being held or being seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is missing? What is missing? If those don't like leave you lit up, what else? What else is missing that would make your heart sing?
Joy.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it's all of it somehow.
Okay, good. So if they got all of those things, if they had an experience of freedom and being held, and if they had an experience of joy, and you landed all of that, or if you got all of those things as a person, how would that leave you? In what experience?
Can you ask again?
I said, if you got all three of those things, right?
Yeah.
Here you are experiencing freedom, experiencing joy, experiencing being like very held and taken care of. If you experienced all of that, and all of those landed with you, how do you think that would leave you? In what kind of experience?
Very satisfied.
Okay. What? Orgasmic? Is that what you're
Orgasmic. That was the word that was
Yeah. Yeah. So notice I was said that, and you go, oh yeah, that was kind of the word coming about, because you were being it for a second, and it was something more than satisfied. You were like me. You had this grin, which was kind of post-orgasmic grin, but yeah. Look at
How would you know? You've never seen my grin, have you?
I don't know. So, I was just guessing. I guess you put it in the notes there. See, look at the idea. Now, you're in touch with something right now. You're in touch with something, even if you don't have the words up for it, you're in touch with something right now. Do you get that?
Yeah.
See, you can't stop laughing. And I said, when you're in touch with your calling, you can't stop smiling, screaming, or you get a thrill out of it. So allow yourself to not necessarily know the words, but keep this in front of you, or put all those words in front of you and start practicing. I want people to experience this, whatever, joyful, orgasmic relief in life. It includes all of these things. And, it's just start practicing, delivering it, practicing being it yourself, and it will start to refine for you. But you just got connected to it. Why? Because you couldn't control your experience. It took you over.
Mm-hmm.
Got that?
Yeah.
In that moment, your mind wasn't there. You were just like, woo, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing.
And
Amazing. Thank you.
What was that, sweetie?
I said amazing. Thank you. It was clarifying for me.
Awesome. Also, for some people, this doesn't apply to everyone, but some people I notice, they kind of have a dirtier version of their calling and they don't want to say it. So they'll say something else that's maybe less free or less radical or less politically incorrect or whatever it is. But also try out, you can all try out just for a second, not as something to land on, but just play. If you had we're hearing echo. Testing. Okay. If you had a dirty way of, not dirty, but like if you had no constraints whatsoever and you could swear, you could cuss, you could use nasty words, you could use juicy words, just see if you have a different description of your calling in that state. Just make sure, basically, it's just an exercise. It's not the thing. It's not to find out your calling, but it is to help you see if you're holding back at all because of some kind of image of, oh, that shouldn't be my spiritual calling because it's not very spiritual. And even something as simple as orgasmic, maybe it's just not something that comes to mind because maybe you have a small subconscious taboo around it. So
Yeah.
Just to break through the taboos, not to land there and for everyone to have a crazy fucking calling. Although why not? But it's got to come from the feeling ultimately. But to clear out those taboos, think wildly and freely and dirty and orgasmically and brutally and like whatever it is. Like maybe there's a fucking in there, like people fucking waking up to their infinite orgasmic nature. Whereas if you don't ever experiment with that taboo in your subconscious, which is just the collective's programming, then maybe you'll make up a polite version of it. But when you say the polite version, you don't feel nearly as connected as when you say the free version.
Yeah. A couple who, in the work we do, the work for companies where we create the calling or the intentions for the company, and they said, how do you want to leave every person? I want to leave them with fuck yeah. And they just like, nice. And they totally transform their business doing the IEC work.
Oh, cool.
What part of our company for our customers, for our staff, for ourselves is not a fuck yeah. And they literally just took their company through the roof, but they weren't trying to. They were just making sure every part of the company was like, fuck yeah. And they were so lit up every time they said it or thought it.
Nice.
But it was exactly what you're talking about. It's just unleashing. Here's what it is. And there's no apology. There's no explanation. There's no description. It just rocks you.
Right. Nice.
And I think that was pretty much what came up as well, like because the word orgasmic came, and with the feeling. And no, but then I felt like, is that even allowed to like there's like definitely some shame around that, like having that.
Yeah. So let loose. And one of the things is being your calling means your goal is being able to deliver to others. Is that people experience that. You are included in people, so you need to be experiencing lots of orgasms.
But it doesn't really though like have anything to do with.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have anything to do like with, well, maybe something, but not ultimately something related to being.
Yeah, it's okay. The thing is that it represents something. I've used this example before about when one of the guys I was working with called me because he couldn't get it and he finally got it and he kept saying the word heli. I mean, what are you talking about, Mark? And he goes, when I jump off the helicopter, heli skiing, and I hit the powder, and it's just this exhilarating, it's alive, heli itself doesn't mean anything. It's what it represents. So it's what orgasmic represents for you, right?
Yeah.
And just be, he finally got it. Oh, it's heli, because, his barrier to using that word originally was because it wouldn't make sense to people. It doesn't have to. It just has to bring it alive for you.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. It's a good way to wrap this up. Anything else, Greg?
I mean, here's the thing I would say is if you could make an incredible impact on your life, truing up, being at home by simply doing this work. Writing inconsistencies in every way, doing the work every day, practicing. And what I would say to you is if you find yourself after a week not doing that, you should just ask yourself what's more important. Like just take all of the insanity and all the confusion, unclarity, the insight, take that all out of the way. The fact is you will do and act consistent with what's important to you. And so if you're not doing this very simple, straightforward work, that does require some effort. If you're not doing it, you just have to deal with something else that's more important. Tell the truth. Nice.
It is kind of like you got to see the environment as being toxic, meaning you'll fall asleep a little bit if you stop doing the work for a few days, right? It's like you're breathing air, you get polluted, you got to cleanse yourself. You eat food, even if it's fucking organic food, you're still going to get some toxins in. It's kind of like that. So let's say that on a Saturday, you do this exercise and you feel cleansed, you feel cleared, vibrationally cleared, you feel clear on your life, clear on your calling, clear on your approach, and you feel in alignment. If you don't repeat that every week, then after a month, you have accumulated toxins or toxic thoughts or toxic behaviors or toxic environments that you have to slice through again. So remember that this is a process that needs to be repeated. And the ones that repeat it the most are the ones that generate the most momentum, that generate the most transformation in themselves and around them, because that really is the difference. Like, you all understand this, you've all heard this. So what makes the difference is those that actually apply it repeatedly. And it's so tempting to think that once you've done it once, it's like, oh, I did my job. Like, I did the work. And I feel clear. I feel like vibrationally clear. I feel self-realized, whatever it is. It's so tempting to then, because we already have the habit of not wanting to do stuff, right? So it's like, oh, I've done it now. I've done it. But actually, the ones that make the most transformation happen within themselves and consequently in the world around them are those that are doing this every week, or doing this every day, or doing this moment to moment, you know, with a microscope. But also zooming out. It's that balance. Like, you want to zoom out. You want to completely relax and unwind and nourish yourself and get into the greatest vision of yourself and like just be in the vibe of it. And then you want to apply that and you want to get specific with it. And you want to do both. But yeah, those that continue to apply that practice will definitely by far see the most results and reap the benefits. And it is a long-term game. Ultimately, it's a long-term game.
It's a practice. It's a way of living. So if you don't attend to eating every day, you starve. If you don't attend to exercise every day, you're no longer in shape. If you don't attend to this every day, you will be out of alignment. It's so not complex. It is not an insight. It's a practice way of living. You get to choose how you want to live. You'll either make this important or you won't.
Cool. That feels like a good wrap up, no?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. And well, within the next 24 hours, you'll see the homework on the Facebook page. And then also by then, maybe some people have got a chance to catch up on the video. As always, I recommend watching every video at least 2 times. And let's see, anything else?
Not for me.
Nope. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you, Bentinho.
Hey, Annie.
I was just going to remind everybody, too, if you didn't see the announcement for Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, not a pitch or anything, just wanted to.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, anything that we should announce right now. So when is your session, Annie?
It's Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific, UTC -7.
Sunday morning. Okay, cool. It's already posted on the group, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. Ciao.
Felt good. You guys are on fire. Love it.
Oh, thanks.
See you, Anurag.